Hi, I'm Josh Lambert, a product manager here at GitLab, and today I'd like to talk about what the compliance group in the manage stage is working on for our 13.10 release. So let's take a quick look. We're working on continuing our efforts in a couple large areas. The first one is the group level merge request approval rules. So the goal here is to be able to have your merge request approval rule settings carried down from instance to group to subgroup and the project levels. And for required or compliance regulated projects to then have those be enforced. So the general logic here will be the settings will always carry through, but for unregulated or normal projects, you can edit them. But for regulated projects, those settings that are carried down will actually be locked. And this way you can enforce certain approval rules for projects where you need to, which have, again, which apply to certain compliance frameworks. And you can see here that how that is applied. So a couple of things here that we're working on. The main thing is that in this point in time, we're largely working on building out the group merge request approval workflow. So we're actually working to replicate some of those various options like removing all approvals when new commits are pushed and things like that, and building those out in that initial group workflow. So that's kind of what we're working on here with a couple of those items that we're working and just overall helping to build up that initial workflow. And then once that's worked out, of course, then they can start to actually work on carrying those and passing those settings through. Next up, we are working on allowing group owners to define compliance configurations. Again, this is a broader effort here that we are continuing in 13.10. The goal is to be able to have a required set of pipelines that run for projects with particular compliance frameworks. So you can see here you have a project that's labeled with a SOX compliance framework, and you can have a SOX project compliance.ciml be combined with their own CIML, and that way you can have certain jobs that are required to run. The part that we're working on right now is actually building out the ability to create these compliance frameworks and also to control which ones apply to which projects. And so you can see here, we're working on creating that framework page, allowing you to edit it as part of this release. And you can see a mock-up right here of what we think that will look like. So here's your group or your project, and you can apply those various frameworks that you've configured previously. So that's the work going on the public configuration. We're also doing a couple other smaller items here. We are working to add GPG keys to the admin credentials workflow. And so we're continuing that work by having them show up now. PATs and SSH keys are already part of that workflow. And so we're just rounding out the list of other access credentials that can be utilized. We're also working on the backend implementation for being able to essentially block an MR from being merged if it hasn't been associated to a JIRA issue. The goal here is to really kind of increase the rate at which MRs have been linked, and that's why you can enforce that from happening before they get merged, if you would so like to. The last item here is continued work on our ability to have an external API for approval rules. Some customers find that our approval rule framework isn't as customizable as they need, and they want additional logic, business logic to apply. And so we're working on an external API, which we can call, and then they can run whatever logic they want to run to ensure that that user can actually approve, or that merge request actually can get approved and then merged. And so this way, it's really makes it very extensible for these more narrower use cases of approval rules. And so for this release, we are working on the addition of the approval grade as a first step towards hooking in the external API check. So that's it for 13.10 for the compliance group. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you again next month for 13.11. Thanks.